As of today, for the first time since the Cold War, the United States and Russia are without a nuclear treaty. The New START Treaty, an agreement that restricted U.S. and Russian nuclear weapon deployments, expired this morning. With no clear path forward for a new deal, there are concerns over what the consequences could be to global security. For more on those risks this morning, we're joined by George Beebe. He's the Director of Grand Strategy at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft and a former CIA Director for Russia Analysis. Good morning.
Good morning.
So the New START Treaty was first signed in 2010. It was limited to the U.S. and Russia. And here's what it limited. Just over 1,500 deployed warheads, 800 deployed and non-deployed launchers, and 700 deployed intercontinental ballistic missiles. How did the deal work?
Well, I think the deal did a couple of things that were both important. One is it did provide those numerical limits, and it provided a means of exchanging data and inspecting each side's holdings to ensure that the signatories were complying with the demands of the treaty. That, in turn, enhanced transparency and mutual confidence on both sides. And it established, I think, a basis for ongoing dialogue between Russia and the United States, which even today still hold over 90% of the world's nuclear weapons. And that, I think, contributed overall to strategic stability. So one of the questions here is not only how do we extend some kind of an agreement or enter into a new agreement that has those kinds of quantitative limits, but also establishes predictability, transparency, and confidence that in turn stabilize the broader U.S.-Russian relationship.
So then how dangerous is a world then without this treaty in place?
Well, I think we're heading toward a more dangerous situation. No question about it. If there is not some sort of follow-on, new talks between Russia and the United States, there is a chance that we could get into an escalating arms race that would have big implications for global stability. However, I don't think that's inevitable. I think there is a desire on the part of the Russians to find some new agreement. President Putin, of course, publicly offered to continue respecting the numerical limits that were set by the New START Treaty in the hope that we can negotiate something more. President Trump, on his part, has not rejected that. In fact, his public comments indicated he thought that was a good idea. What I think is getting in the way right now is that we're continuing to negotiate over a settlement in Ukraine. And I think the Trump administration is reluctant to signal to the Russians that we're going to move forward on a new arms control deal if the Russians aren't willing to compromise on peace in Ukraine.
Well, speaking of New Deal, Trump has repeatedly said that he wants a future nuclear treaty with Russia to also include China. Why does Trump want China involved?
Well, because the Chinese are engaged in a major strategic nuclear buildup. For most of their nuclear history, they've had what you would call a minimal sufficiency retaliatory capability. And they decided several years ago that that was not sufficient any longer in the world that they're facing. So they're pointing toward a nuclear buildup that will end up with an arsenal that is at least comparable to those of Russia and the United States. And that's a serious concern, of course, for us. And we want some sort of means of controlling that and bringing that same transparency and predictability to the relationship with China on nuclear weapons. The Chinese, however, have indicated no desire to engage in trilateral talks or even bilateral talks with the United States on this issue. So for now, I think what's likely is the United States, once we have a Ukraine settlement under our belts, we'll move forward with talks with the Russians. We'll try to make progress on that issue. That, in turn, will, in the future, make it easier to bring the Chinese into this. I think that's the thinking.
So, George, in the in-between, really quickly, in the in-between, when we don't have an agreement in place as of today and we are still waiting to sign a peace deal with Ukraine, what happens in the in-between?
Well, I hope and I expect that both Russia and the United States will show some self-restraint on this. There is nothing legally prohibiting, for example, loading up delivery vehicles with a lot of the warheads that are right now in storage but not deployed. So this could, if the two sides don't show self-restraint, this could end up in a major buildup fairly quickly. I doubt the Russians or the United States will do that. I think there's enough goodwill on each side and enough self-interest in not going down that path that they're not going to immediately enter into some sort of new arms race.
George Beebe, thanks for your time this morning.
You're welcome.
If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.